Thank you so much for allowing me to speak in front of your group here. I'm going to try to start my presentation here, and everybody see that okay?
Yeah, we can see that perfect.
Okay.
And then I think, yeah, you start from, that's it. Lovely.
Okay. I've been involved, like I say, in ghost research for about 48 years now. And during that time, I've come across, just thousands and thousands of places of a haunted nature, not only here in the United States, but I've been to England 3 times now. The last time I was with my friend Paul Adams, who was a great follower of Harry Price and Peter Underwood. And I had a chance to meet both Peter Underwood, Tom Parrott, who was also past chairman of the Ghost Club, and also Anthony Hipsley Cox, the author of Haunted Britain. And that was really a pleasure. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have a chance to visit him when he was alive. So I'm just going to start here and just go in some of my slides. This is kind of the logo of our group. You can see it's 45 years, but it's already 1 year behind. So it's actually going on 46 years now. I started back serious research back in 1975. I had a long-standing interest in the paranormal. I guess I can blame this spooky hobby of mine on my parents and grandparents, who often told me ghost stories when I was a youngster. So that kind of got me started, especially here in the Chicagoland area. So back around 1975, we started to put together kind of a loosely associated group of like-minded people. And we got together and we started a group called the Ghost Trackers Club. And I worked as a research assistant from 1975 until 1982, when eventually we changed the name to Ghost Research Society, which is a bit more indicative of what we actually do, ghost research. These are some pretty young pictures of a young Dale kind of doing things around. I travel all across the country trying to scope out and investigate different locations. The upper left-hand corner is the Mako train station in North Carolina, where Spooklight has been seen. And I'm actually examining a railroad tie from the old railroad that no longer goes through. The lower left-hand corner is the Lemp Mansion in St. Louis, very, very haunted. Bachelor's Grove on the upper left, and the lower right is Rose Hill Cemetery. Now the center one, I was actually out doing an investigation at the Gurdon Spooklight. That's where I wrote that book, Illuminated Darkness, the Mystery of Spooklight. So I'm actually holding a picture that was given to me by a reporter from the Joplin Globe of the Joplin Spooklight, which I had also investigated that summer as well. So you can see that's kind of very early Dale there. One of my favorite investigators, and I'm really a big fan, is that of Harry Price. Harry Price was born in Shropshire in 1881. He maintained a lifelong interest in both stage magic and conjuring. He joined the Society for Psychical Research in 1920, and he debunked a number of psychics and so-called spirit photographs. He was friends with other debunkers, including Harry Houdini, Ernest Palmer. He formed a society in 1925 called the National Laboratory of Psychical Research, kind of a rival to the SPR. In 1927, he joined the Ghost Club, a very prestigious, long-standing organization. And by the way, I was very honored to give a talk there at the Ghost Club. Until its temporary closing in 1936, that Ghost Club, kind of shuttered in 1936. But then in 1938, he reestablished the Ghost Club with him as the chairman. And he's best known for research and investigations into the Borley Rectory, which was a very famous haunted building in England, which unfortunately is no longer there. When I was there in June, we went to the location of the Borley Rectory, saw the Borley Church, but there's no sign of the Borley Rectory. In this picture, it's not a very good picture, unfortunately. It might be a little bit pixelized a little bit, but this is some of his ghost hunting tools and apparatuses that he used during investigations. You know, he's got things like slippers so he can sneak around. He's got brandy. I don't know what that's for. But then he's got first aid kits, movie cameras, microscopes, intercom equipment, magnifying glasses, flash equipment, candles. He's got a stethoscope around his neck, and that was used to listen to vibrations inside walls, is what he said. He also employed different ways to detect ghosts. One of them was like to lay talcum powder on the floor to see if the ghost might be behind footprints, to attach strings and bells to doorknobs to see if the door would open and create a sound or break the string. So he's kind of like one of the early premier ghost hunters that really went out to investigate and to, in some cases, debunk what was going on. And like I say, he is so well known for the Borley. So we kind of move ahead to the year 1975. So I mean, that's going, you know, from 1800s to like the 1975. It's a big jump, but this is kind of some of the equipment that I used during the 1970s. Now remember, back in the 1970s, they'd had no real ghost hunting or ghost investigating tools. We kind of had to adapt other tools for different purposes into the ghost field. So 35mm camera, Polaroid camera. My EMF meter back then was an ordinary compass, because compass should point to true magnetic north unless it comes in contact with a strong magnetic field. Flashlights, thermometers, and cassette tape recorders. So that was basically my arsenal back when I started investigating. So really it was more of observation and trying to document stuff with sound, the tape recorders, voice activated tape recorders, and obviously through pictures using 35mm and Polaroid film. So if we kind of fast forward a little bit, if we kind of go into like a time tunnel, if you will, and if you went back a little bit forward, you'd end up in the mid-1980s. Now, the mid-1980s was really something that things began to come out in the field that, again, these devices had other purposes. They were not used necessarily for the paranormal field. So the upper left-hand corner, you have a K2 meter. The lower left-hand corner, you have what they call the Dr. Gauss, a Gauss meter. The upper right, it's a cell sensor, another EMF device, and the one on the lower right is called the magnetic field detector #1. I guess there was never a number 2, which was kind of interesting. It was only a #1. But these devices were actually put together and built for the purpose of detecting high EMF fields inside of a home, which can be dangerous. In some cases, people that are exposed to high levels of electromagnetic frequencies can actually begin to hallucinate. They can have skin irritations. They can get rashes. It's what's known as EMF hypersensitivity. So these devices were not necessarily there for ghost research, but for picking up high levels of EMF. Now, the idea that spirits are a form of energy. Einstein said it very eloquently that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It simply changes form. So there are certain biochemical energies in our bodies while we're living that are measurable with equipment. So what happens to those energies when we die? Do they hang around for a bit? Do they go on to, say, another level of consciousness, a heaven or hell, the other side, whatever your belief system might be? So those energies, if that spirit does seem to hang around for a bit, they can sometimes be detected with EMF devices like this. There's normal background EMF all around us. There's also gamma, X-rays, cosmic rays, radio waves, TV signals. we can't see those. It doesn't mean they're not there, but they are there. So when we pick up something with these very early equipment, what are we picking up? Are we picking up some normal background? Are we picking up something naturally in the environment? Or are we picking up a spirit? So these devices were not the best. Some people still use some of these, and they pick up a broad array of EMF, both natural and maybe supernatural. It's really hard to determine what you're picking up. So again, if we go back into a time machine, this is a clip from the time machine actually, and go a bit forward again in time. Now we're traveling to the 1990s. Now 1990s is where it really gets interesting, because in the 1990s, there are more and better pieces of equipment that people can purchase for the purpose of paranormal research. In 1996, early 1997, the Sony night shot cameras came out. The cameras that literally see in the dark using an infrared beam. They're not actually infrared cameras. I actually call them near infrared, but you can actually see in total darkness. The center is kind of like our setup with different cameras. You can see a monitor that's actually it's a quad splitter. So you have 4 different cameras that we can actually set up and monitor from a central location as we're recording. Digital recorders came out about that same time as well. So you're kind of graduating from the early EVPers that use bulky reel-to-reel tape going to cassette, and now we're in digital. So the digital technology began to come out about that time. The lower left are passive infrared motion sensors that actually emit a beam of invisible light that if something passes through, it'll set off the detectors. But again, with that, you have to have something that it's got mass that would set it off. The center thing is part of our device, our quad splitter for our cameras. And then on the lower right is a Raytech non-contact thermometer gun, which is supposed to give you readings for cold spots and hot spots. But again, it's because it's a contact reading. When you initiate the device, it will go to the nearest object, whether it be a wall, a door, a floor, a window, and come back and basically will give you that contact reading of what's going on. So if there is a spirit there, the spirit would have to have some mass, so that would be able to bounce off and then give you a reading. It's not going to give you an air temperature reading. It's a contact reading. So again, trying to develop some of these devices or incorporate them, I should say, into ghost research is something that we were doing in the 1990s. And again, going back into space and time to more of a futuristic. Now we've arrived about 25 years in the future, more or less, in the early 2000s. Now this is where it really, really gets interesting, because now we have devices that are built specifically for the purpose of ghost research. These have no other, except for the gaming cam, which is in the upper left or upper right hand corner, which is a trail cam. These other devices really have no other purpose except for ghost research. You have on the, I'm just going to go from the top row on the top, you have a kind of like a, what do you call it? Like a, I'm trying to think. It's kind of like a laser grid. That's what I'm trying to say. But that little screen directly in the center of that device, it will actually show the configuration of what you just picked up, which is really, really interesting. The center two are ghost boxes. The first one being an SB7, and later on the SB11. In spirit boxes, as you know, they quickly sweep AM/FM frequencies, and what we're looking for is spirit voices that are coming through in the white noise in between the, each one of those is a channel. And these can scan incredibly fast to the point where you can't even in some cases hear a word come through. And the black one in the center, the SB11, actually has the capability of disconnecting from the radio. So in other words, you're not picking up radio chatter unless you're close to a very high, say a 50,000 watt transmitter, then you might still get a little bit of radio bleed through. The gaming cam on the upper right-hand thing has a very, very bright infrared flash. So you can take pictures in total darkness and it illuminates an area just like daylight. You can also record video as well as pictures. Now the bottom row is pretty interesting. We're starting to get into some of these, what I call real-time audio devices. The Obelisk X, before that, the PX, even before that, some of the paranormal pucks. These are devices that actually have databases. They have a dictionary mode and a phonetic mode. In the dictionary mode, there's about 4,280 some odd words. It's very common to the English language. The idea is you ask a question and the spirit is sometimes able to pull out the appropriate word in the dictionary, which we've had some very, very good results with that. What I think is more scientific is the phonetic mode. In phonetic mode, it allows spirits to form their own words, putting together vowels and consonants that they can then put into sentences. And we've had entire sentences come out. Later on, I'm going to show you a video of an entire sentence that came out using this device, and it's amazing. The tri-field natural EM meter is probably, in my opinion, the very best EMF meter on the market today for various reasons. It not only picks up magnetic field, has electrical fields, radio and microwave in different settings, but this device will not pick up any internal AC fields. So it won't give you false readings. You can put it near an electric box, a fuse box, a light switch, an electrical outlet, and that thing will be 0.0. If you put a K2 next to those, it'll be into the red. So it just indicates that this device is more scientific. It hardly ever goes off. But when it does, then you gotta kind of scratch your head, what's causing this device to go off? Because it's not going to be set off by natural fields. The black device here is a XCAM structured light sensor device, first put together and built by Digital Dowsing. Bill Chappell, who I've met, very smart genius of a person. This device actually uses the old Connect system, which was part of gaming systems. So when you activate this device, it maps out an area of invisible dots that you cannot see with the naked eye. The night shot cameras can pick that up. And if something were to interrupt those dots, which again, you can't see, in the viewfinder, it will show up as a stick figure. And you might have seen some of those on TV. Now, that's a $1,200 device. It's one of my most expensive devices I've purchased so far, and it works amazingly. The very last device here is what you call a geophone. It's a vibration sensor. So if you were to put this, say, maybe there's a report of a ghost walking up and down the stairs or walking down this corridor, you could put that in there. And if they were, say, if the floor was made up of wood, say like a wooden floor or something like that, that had connecting beams, if the spirit again was able to make those beams move or impart some weight to them, that device would indicate that something is walking on the floor or walking up the stairs. And we've had good experiences with that when nobody was around, that thing started to go off. Oh, here we go. This is where I think, believe it or not, mindsets began to change. Prior to 1984, when the movie Ghostbusters first came out, a lot of people pretty much kept to themselves about their reports of spirit activity in their homes because they probably would think that you thought that they were crazy. Maybe a candidate for the men in the white coats coming to take you away to some sanitarium because you were demented of some way, shape, or form. But in 1984, when the movie Ghostbusters came out, and I've been researching for many years before the movie came out, I saw a completely different shift in mindset where people, after seeing the movie or beginning to see motion pictures similar to Ghostbusters, it was a farce. It was a fantasy about ghosts. We don't trap ghosts and and store them in a containment facility, but this is where this is part of the movie. Ghostbusters showed you the humorous side of ghosts, that maybe all ghosts weren't thought to be harmful or fearful. You didn't have to be fearful of ghosts, and people began to come out of the closet, so to speak, with their ghost stories. And I saw a big shift in the amount of cases that I began to tackle, because before, people kind of hid those cases. They didn't want to talk about them. Now they thought, hey, Ghostbusters is up. I can talk about what's been going on in my house for the past 10 or 20 years. And of course, picture of me up there with my favorite Ghostbuster, Dan Aykroyd. I actually had met him on an occasion when he was filming some segments for a brand new show called Way Out, about all types of paranormal activity. They shot like 12 or 15 episodes and it never came on the air. I guess they never reached an agreement and they just scrapped all that stuff. But I got a chance to meet him in person, and he is, he's not just an actor, he is very into the paranormal. And being that said, the book you see below is actually a book written by Peter Aykroyd with a foreword, as you can see, by Dan Aykroyd. And I didn't know about this book until I came across it in a bookstore one day. And there's literally about, say, a page and a half devoted to the Ghost Research Society, myself, and spirit photography, which I really felt honored to be in a book, written by the Aykroyds. These are some of the movies that came out from the 60s right up to the present. Some of these basically, are based on true stories, supposedly, like the Amityville Horror, The Entity, The Exorcist, things like that. And some of the other ones are just great movies that came out, like Poltergeist, White Noise, Shudder, The Legend of Hell House, one of my favorites of all time, House on Haunted Hill by Vincent Price, Ghost with Patrick Swayze. Now, the bottom three, Ghost, Sixth Sense, and the others, I always quote these when I'm talking to people on my presentation or I'm doing a ghost tour, to always say that Hollywood has finally began to get these, the whole idea of ghost correct. They finally got it correct. And why? Because in Ghost with Patrick Swayze, remember he was killed as a robbery, he came back, running back, saw his body being held by his fiancée, and he was dead. It just happened so quickly, untimely death. Same thing with Bruce Willis in Sixth Sense. Same thing with Nicole Kidman and the others. So they began to finally get that idea of untimely death associated with later ghost activity. Now in Shudder, for instance, I was actually contacted by the producers prior to that movie coming out to do a press release because I was in the spirit photography. So I had done a press release, gave them about a paragraph or so, which they actually use as a promotion for the movie Shudder. And I was very honored to do that. And the interesting thing about a lot of these movies, most people, when they watch a motion picture and the credits start rolling, everybody leaves because the movie's over, right? Well, not Dale. I will sit there because I want to see technical advisors, because in many of these horror or ghost presentations here, there is a technical advisor who very often is somebody like myself, a ghost researcher, an investigator, who is lending their expertise to the production crew, to the producer, of how maybe this movie should be put together, so it doesn't look like it's way out like crazy, like maybe the Amityville Horror was, but some of the others are actually based on true accounts, and these ghost investors were contacted for their expertise. Now we got some audio here I'm going to play, and I hope you'll be able to hear it okay. These are different devices. Let me see if I can move this bar down a little bit. There we go. These are different devices that we use at different locations, and these are EVPs, electronic voice phenomena. The idea to ask a question and get a response that can be recorded on a digital format, or in some cases even video. And the top three EVPs I'm going to play were from Waverly Hills Sanitarium in Louisville, Kentucky, a very haunted location. It was a former tuberculosis sanitarium. A lot of people died from tuberculosis. So these EVPs are actually were put together and recorded on what's called a mini box, which is kind of like a ghost box, but it's a bit more technical because it was actually put together. Some of these were started by a man named Frank Sumption. So some of these were called Frank's boxes, and there were Joe's boxes. There were all different named boxes that of people that were putting this together. So in these three EVPs up here, I was with Rosemary Ellen Guiley. Rosemary Ellen Guiley, if you're not familiar, she was a researcher and investigator that I worked with for more than 30 years. She wrote, about 50 books on the subject. She was a frequent guest on George Norrie, Coast to Coast AM. And we were there, and we were in various sections of Waverly Hills. And I'm going to play these for you because what's interesting is listen for the question. Sometimes the question doesn't, the answer doesn't respond to the question, but listen to the voice. The voice on all three of these is the same voice. And now remember where we're at. We're in a sanitarium. So I'm going to play this first one without telling you what it says here.
Here with us, we've got Rosemary, Joey, Lisa, Nicole, solitary. And the mini box, mini box and the ionization meter. This is where I had some communication last year, in this very spot.
You hear that right at the end, that voice. Now, some people say it says, you got the ghost. Sort of like if you were asking for the ghost, they said, hey, I'm the ghost, you got the ghost. Some people say it says something different. Now, that voice, again, it just came out of this mini box. Now, that's Rosemary Ellen Guiley's voice right there. I have a lot of video of her, which I treasure because I worked with her for such a long period of time. And I know Randy Liebeck also worked with her for many years as well. Now, this next one is going to be the same voice. So listen to this.
Communicate.
Anybody hear what that said? Because it's very clear. Now remember, we're in a former tuberculosis sanitarium. So we believe it says, need medical care. I'll play it again.
Communicate.
Now, what a place for something like that to come through. Now, remember, that's the same voice that says you got the ghost. And this third one is the same voice again. Listen to what this one says. That one says, we're almost positive it says, needs therapy. I'll play that again real quick. Now for that to come through, now remember, we're scanning AM FM frequencies extremely fast. But what is the chance of the same voice coming through saying at least two of the three things related to a hospital, need medical care and need therapy? I mean, some people say, well, you're just picking up radio frequencies. I don't believe so. Because again, we're scanning so fast that we're lucky to get a word, let alone an entire sentence. Now, this next section here is pretty interesting. We're using a device, it's an application called the Phasma Box that you can actually purchase yourself at extremesenses.com. I think that the app is like 20 bucks. What the app does is it scans internet radio and sound banks mixed with a reverb and echo effect. Now, usually when these apps began to come out, I said, well, no, these apps are just bogus. There's nothing to them. Well, not so. We began to get entire sentences responding to questions we just asked. We have the first one, I believe, is from a cemetery called McConaughey Cemetery. It's a cemetery, they had no tombstone. And we were out there, we just simply asked the question, how many graves are here? Listen for the response.
Turn one of the switches.
Oops, wrong one. Well, we'll do that one first. We were actually in the Elgin Casket Factory that we were doing an investigation, and we had this SLS device, which again shows a stick figure, and there was a fuse box on the wall that was there for effect only. It wasn't connected to anything, and there was a stick figure standing next to it. So I said, and he's like touching the fuse box. So I said, if you're there, can you turn on one of the switches? Now listen for the response. Go backwards here.
Turn one of the switches. It doesn't work. No. I said, turn one of the switches. It doesn't work. That's pretty good. Very good. That was good.
See, we asked the question, can you turn one of those switches on? And the device says an entire sentence, it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work because it's not connected to anything. And that was pretty amazing. And that was one of the first ones we got. And I go, wow. You know, sometimes I get really excited when I hear stuff like that. Now let me play this next one. This might be what we're talking about the cemetery here.
How many people are buried here? Over 100. Did you hear that?
Yeah, that was very good.
We asked the question, how many people are buried here? And it says, yeah, it's either more than 100 or over 100. It's kind of hard, but it's right in that neighborhood. Again, an entire sentence that came out in response to a question. We play this last one here for you. This is pretty interesting too. We were in an old abandoned building, and this area that we were in was used for drug rehabilitation. So you're going to hear this voice coming through, and it kind of goes, oh, like it's really excited. So I'll just play it and listen for the response here. It's pretty interesting.
What was that?
Oh, something, yeah, right. Are you excited for us? We're excited. Did you hear that? We're excited. Holy cow.
So we thought that the voice was excited, and we said, "Are you excited?" And the thing says, "We're excited." It comes right back with a response, "We're excited." That was pretty amazing. There's the last one here. Oh, sorry, that was one display. Sorry. Let's go down to the last row here, which this is the SB the spirit box. Is called SB7 Ghost Box, and these were from Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, which is in Tennessee, and also the Thomas House pool area, swimming pool area, where a little girl had drowned. That was in Red Boiling Springs, Tennessee. So we had a Tennessee trip here. So listen to this first one.
Are you the one that's been seen down here? That wasn't me. Did I say that? Or is it my ear playing tricks? Did you say it wasn't me?
We had, when we were there, we've been there about 4 or 5 times. And one time we were there, we were all in one room and we heard screaming coming down the hallway. And this is an abandoned hospital. The doors are locked and secure. And so we asked, when we heard that, we came back another year later, we asked the question, was that you? And it says it wasn't me. So that's pretty interesting. Now, we don't know who the me is because he never identified himself. Let's see what this one is.
Are you a little boy? Girl.
So this is at the pool area outside using the spirit box. We asked, "Are you a little boy?" Now this one's, you almost have to have headphones, but I can hear it because I know where it's at, but it says girl. So there was a little girl that drowned in this pool. We know that for a fact. This is a matter of official record. But then we asked a follow-up question about, "Are you a little girl?" And it says girl. It's my pointer. Okay, there it is.
Did you say you were a girl? Girl again.
So I mean, those are, in my opinion, what this section here is what I believe to be intelligent responses. In other words, they're not just random words coming out, they're responses to questions we asked. So that's pretty interesting. So it's not what you would call a residual haunt, sort of like a taped replay of an event, but basically kind of like an entity that's still hanging around, a surviving personality, if you will. And that's interesting. I mean, that's not often encountered. Usually most people that have hauntings or they have heard about places that are haunted, they're usually residual. There's footsteps going up and down, just noises. Very rarely, if you even see a ghost, there's no interaction. In other words, the spirit doesn't respond to you. In the intelligent haunt, there can be interaction. You see the ghost sees you, and you recognize each other, and there's facial or eye contact. That is really interesting. Or even disembodied voices that you can hear in real time. Those are bone chilling. We've had a lot of experiences with that. Okay, now we got some video here, which I have a little tiny little video in the center, but these are pretty interesting videos. The first one, this is a night shot camera. We're going through a Mercy Hospital, which is in Gary, Indiana, not too far from Chicago. This is where the entire Michael Jackson family was born. They were born in this hospital. Now it's a shell of his former self. And we have special permission. We never trespass by it. We have special permission to go in there from the Gary Police and the village. And I have this obelisk X, which I showed you earlier, in my top pocket. It was on the entire time. It didn't say a word. Okay, it was in phonetic mode. But this is the mode where the spirits can form their own words, because in dictionary mode, it can only say one word at a time. In the phonetic mode, you can just say one word at a time. Just say it like we're talking. So we got up to an area, and I'll just play it, and it's very interesting.
All records. I'll take some of those. Take some of that for your. Did you say get out of here? That's what it sounds like to me. Did it? Sorry, I was just joking.
Now, let me explain what we saw there. This was an abandoned hospital. These are boxes and boxes of patients' records left behind. So much for HIPAA clauses and privacy. And sometimes what I like to do, with permission, is sometimes take a little, I hate to say it, a bit of a memento from a place. I got a little bit of a kind of a museum downstairs here with artifacts and so forth. Now, these are patients' records. I'm not going to take anything like that home. But my videographer who was filming it said, do you want to take something? Before he even got that out of his mouth, the obelisk in phonetic mode said, get out of here. Let me play that again.
All records. I'll take some of those. Take some of that for your. Did you say get out of here? That's what it sounds like to me. Did it? Sorry, I was just joking.
And that's amazing again, because we didn't ask a question. If there was a spirit there, he didn't like that idea that we might take something out of that room, and he just said, get out of here, really clearly in phonetic mode. Now, this one here is actually the Booth House, B-O-O-T-H. I mean, it was thought to be perhaps where John Wilkes Booth stayed. That's been totally debunked. But it's in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. And we were doing an investigation, and this is a full spectrum camera. As you can see, it's got that kind of a pinkish glow to it. And the woman on the far right, you only see what she's holding in her hand. She's holding what's called a video obelisk. Now, the video obelisk actually displays words in a goggles that you can actually wear, or you can hook it up to your camcorder, and it will imprint those words on when it comes out. So we're just kind of talking here and standing around kind of quietly, and it only comes out in dictionary mode. So these kind of random words are coming out until 3 words come out that are very, very relevant to where we're at.
Left. Lateral. North. Lead. Left. Adding out. Triangle.
Fire. Enter. Foyer.
Yeah. Was there a fire in the foyer?
Now, there actually was, and before we actually did this little investigation right here, we were taken around by the curator of this building, and there was a fire in the foyer in the entrance, obviously, to the building. So it comes out fire, enter, foyer. 3 words together, which make total sense to what happened here in the past. The obelisk was doing the best job it could, trying to relate that experience of a fire burning down part of the entranceway to this building. Now, this is pretty interesting. Maybe the words and her lips don't match sometimes, depending on the bandwidth, but this is Sarah Estep. Sarah Estep was the founder of the American Association for Electronic Voice Phenomena, AAEVP, a pioneer in her time. I met with her, I worked with her, we did workshops together. She's no longer with us, unfortunately, and she's going to be talking about, for a very brief time here, this device that Dr. Moeller put together, and let's listen to her.
William O'Neill had long conversations with Dr. Mueller, who'd been on the other side for some time. And I was just so impressed. I had never heard such long conversations with this. Oh, that is just wonderful. George was very, very impressed. And then about a year or so later, he introduced the Spiricom system in Washington, D.C. George took the Spiricom system and went to many countries around the world.
But feedback from Meek's global mission was not what he'd expected.
When people would hear these sample tapes, just like I had, they say, oh, that's the kind of results we want to have. And so they would buy the Spiricom manual, and it told how to build the system and so forth. And they would build it, and then they would sit at their tape recorder and they would use the Spiricom system. No one in the world, no one had the results with Spiricom as William O'Neill is given credit for having.
Yes, sir. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, sir. I'm sorry, sir. Please forgive me. That's all right, William. That's all right. Oh, boy.
And so that is the unfortunate history of Spiricom. Spiricom has been DEAD for probably 12, 15 years. William O'Neill had long conversations with.
That is a very interesting device. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but they did a lot of experimentation with the Spiricom, George Meek, and other people, and the words and the entire sentences coming out in response to questions asked was something that we are only now beginning to replicate, if you will, with some of the devices like the Obelisk, the Ghost boxes, and the Phasma boxes. But this was well into the 60s and 70s when this experimentation was done. So this was really the state of the art at that time. Now, see what we got here. This next one is pretty interesting. If this is the one I'm pretty sure we're looking at the right one. We were in Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in Weston, West Virginia. It's a huge building, 256,000 square feet. And we were in a location where there was some isolation cells where people that were kind of unruly. They threw them in these isolation cells. And there was we had been told on multiple occasions from different tour guides that there was a very unruly patient in real life called Ruth that used to hate people from the opposite sex. She would throw her food, her TV trays, her coffee at doctors, orderlies, patients, visitors, anybody who was male. So we were investigating just down the corridor, maybe no more than 30 feet away from where Ruth had been reported doing these things. And I was there with 3 female investigators. That's very important to remember. I was the only male investigator. Suddenly, my right arm felt like it was dipped into a deep freeze. It was completely ice cold. The hair stood up on my arm. I got a static charge. And then, believe it or not, you're going to see something grabbed my butt. And it was an ice cold hand. I wasn't scared. I said, kind of bring it on, because that's what we're here for. Now, the 3 females felt nothing. They had EMF devices, they had temperature gauges, none of them felt the draft. So I'm going to play that little section here. I'm pretty sure this is the right one. There we go.
I'm not feeling anything there.
Got the floor?
The floor is on, I'm not getting off.
Is there anything on his leg to call the temperature?
Well, no, I mean, there's fluctuations in temperature, but then there's no pattern.
There's no temperature change here, but the thermometer meter is up to 1.2.
Well, now you might have doors over.
But no, he's getting.
No, I'm not feeling anything over here, but he is. And I'm not, I would have felt draft or something here.
Now that was interesting because nobody else felt it except me. I guess that was her way of saying, hey, you're too close, we want you to move away. Now we continued for a few minutes beyond that. We began to do an obelisk session. We did an obelisk in phonetic mode. Again, they have to form their own words. So I asked the question, do you want us to leave or do you want me to leave? One word came through, you. So we left, not because we were scared, but because if we think we're crowding the spirit or getting too close, we just leave, we go someplace else. We never had any more issues. That was really interesting. This is a cave we investigated called Leonard's Cave in Red Bowling Springs, Tennessee. We had a K2, again, a K2, but I mean, we had a K2 kind of jammed into the wall. We're basically underground, so we really aren't picking up really too much as far as EMF. I mean, it's pitch dark out there. So I'm going to play this little section here. Oh, wrong one, sorry. Oops. Okay, well, let's do this one here. This is that same hospital we did earlier, the Michael Jackson Hospital, and in Gary, Indiana, Mercy. And this is one of my investigators going down to set up some equipment. It's pitch dark, totally dark. You're seeing night shot. And I'll just play this to show what kind of happened here. Sorry about that.
There was the door over here. The door over here. Good shot. Door right here. You guys heard that? You hear that?
Where was it?
Right here. It was this door.
Oh, that door?
Mhm.
Now, this was an interior door. This wasn't an outside door. It really wasn't windy outside. It didn't have a latching mechanism on it, but one of the investigators was kind of standing, and we always kind of work in teams of two. So my one investigator was down the hallway, the other one was at the edge of the hallway. So they're kind of watching out for each other. And suddenly you hear this big slam of this door. We don't know what caused it. We never had any more instances of that taking place throughout the rest of the time that night shot camera was monitoring that hallway. Oops, sorry. Okay, this is pretty interesting. This is a kind of a time-lapse sequence that we were investigating a Post-Town Elementary School in Middleton, Ohio. Now, it's kind of grainy because it's an old night shot camera, but we're in a doll room. You can see a bunch of dolls in the background. We put this doll in this chair, almost in the center, and we put an eddy meter. Now, an eddy meter picks up all different types of parameters, including EMF, temperature, vibration, barometric pressure, things like that. It's a multi-purpose device. Now, in the actual video, that device moves, but it moves so slowly that the eye can barely discern it. So what we did, we took this entire sequence and we kind of sped it up a little bit to show how this meter was actually moving and the extent this meter actually moved. Oops. That's amazing. That's actual manipulation of a physical object by something in the room. That was nobody in the room. There was a night shot camera just monitoring that dial and that eddy meter. We were elsewhere in the building. It's a huge building. My investigator who shot this was his first capture. So he was elated that he had caught something like this, and he was constantly showing it. Look at this great video. We don't know what caused it, but we know that when we watched the original video, that meter moved so very slowly that you couldn't tell it was moving until we took that section and made a time lapse, and what you just saw right there. Okay, this section here, I don't know what happened to that Leonard's Cave one. I'll have to look for that. But this is another place we investigated. This was Illinois Beach Resort up in Zion, Illinois, which is almost as far north as you can go before you hit the state of Wisconsin. Now, we were actually given, unlimited surveillance and movement through the entire building the whole night. This was a corridor that was not open normally to the public. This is where the cooks, the waiters, and other staff would walk up and down. So we basically took 2 night shot cameras and we piggybacked them back to one another, one face in one direction, the other face in the other direction, and we left this area. We went somewhere else. What you're going to see is pretty amazing. This is a zoomed in version, an enlarged version of this one corridor. And can you see what I'm kind of pointing out? Can you see my little arrow right here? This is a doorway going into another room. It's kind of this is like like another arch here, but this is a doorway or like a part of a threshold going into this room right here. What you're going to see, and it's not super clear, but it's definitely something that we can't explain. You're going to see a moving shadow figure. He's going to come from over here. He's going to pause momentarily right around here. You'll actually see the blackness, but you can see through the blackness. He hesitates, and then he goes into this room. Everybody see that? That is really, really amazing. It's our first moving shadow figure we ever caught. Let me play that again here. Watch right here. Now there was no reports of any shadow instances seen in this hallway. Some of the staff said they just kind of felt creeped out in this, especially after dark. They didn't like to go down this corridor by themselves, so they basically, asked for other people to kind of assist them. Okay, this is a pretty interesting video. It's very quick. This is in Haven Crest Castle in Savannah, Illinois, in the northwestern portion of Illinois. This is literally a castle, okay? And we were setting up a night shot camera. You can see the lights are still on because we hadn't even went dark yet. This was at the end of a long dining room table where the owner and a psychic had felt something. So we set the tri-field natural EM meter right here. It never went off, by the way. But if you look where I'm pointing, right in here. This is part of a curtain that was kind of like, it wasn't completely closed. And you kind of see a slit right in here. You're going to see, and this is a zoomed in version again, you're going to see a full bodied apparition go from right to left, dressed in white, apparently has something on her head. We thought initially it looked like a nurse. So we'll play this several times because it is really quick. There's no sound, by the way. So watch this area right in here. See that? I got it kind of looped here. Now, when we showed this to the owner, he immediately went into the other room, dragged out a shoebox full of pictures because his wife had died. And one of the things he thought was haunting this building was his wife, because they used to dress up in medieval accoutrements. You know, there was knights in shining armor. I mean, they dressed like that. And he showed me a picture that looked remarkably similar to that apparition, because we actually were able to get a freeze frame, a screen capture of that image. And he was visibly shook up when he saw this video, and we asked to do a follow-up, and he kind of he said no. He said he had seen enough. This last video here is of a building called Casa Madrid in Melrose Park. Now, this used to be a speakeasy and a gambling facility during times of prohibition in the United States. And we are down in what's called the tire room, because you're going to see a lot of tires and rims, because now they use it for something else. They sell speaker systems and speakers for your car, and then tires and rims down there. So we're sitting down in the total darkness with a night shot camera, and we're all sitting down when this took place. And you're going to hear one of our investigators said, "Did you move something down there?" And then you're going to hear something, which is, again, it's almost like on command. That's the obelisk. Just said help, by the way.
That wasn't you? Is there anybody else down here with us? Well, obviously, I knew you. Oh, no. Did you move something down here? The tires fell. No, they didn't. They're the same way they were. No, I saw them, Kim. Okay, something came down over here. I think it was something down there. He stand right here with his 3 times. He's still here or back here? I think this here. No, stand right with a near those. Stand with a near those. I saw something move, like right here.
Did you knock the tires down? Now that's really interesting, because again, we said, did you move something down there? So somebody had heard something real subtle, like a subtle little noise, which really didn't pick up on the video audio. I don't know if any of you ever watched those ghost shows on TV, you know, and I'm not even going to mention them to give any recognition. But if they would have been down there, I think if they would have heard that, I think they'd have been flying out the door. Now, you can see we were there. We wanted to explore. We wanted to find out what was going on, because that's what we're there for, is actually to investigate and to gather evidence. Okay, we're going to go into some pictures now as well. These are pictures, in some cases were given to me, or in some cases we took. This is in a place called Forest Home Cemetery, which is in Forest Park, Illinois. This gentleman was out there with his son one afternoon, bright sunny days, you can see, and he was taking pictures. Now, he was using an old style pocket 110 Instamatic camera before the 35s came out. His son was using an SX70 Polaroid camera, where you get the picture, it develops in your head in 60 seconds. Well, he caught this little area right over here, there's a mound of dirt and there's like a white little trail of light. And I kind of circled this area because it looks very much like a face. Now, his son picked up the same thing. 2 cameras picked up this trail of mist coming out of this mound of dirt. Now, that's kind of the blow up of it. And you can see the white trail coming down. You can see what maybe looks like hair. Now, is this pareidolia? Or is this actually a face, 2 eyes, nose, a mouth? I mean, it's really kind of hard to say, but the interesting thing is when we went back there to try to take some other pictures and duplicate this area, that church that was behind those mausoleums had been burnt down by arsonists in the middle of the night. So there was a lot of people breaking into mausoleums, in some cases even stealing the remains of people, bones and so forth. Really kind of gruesome stuff that happened here. And we often wonder if this is the ghost of somebody who had their body parts removed by whether it be teenagers, drunken people, or people just doing it to be morbid. Now this is a very interesting picture. This was a house on Damon Avenue, which this woman had just moved into, and this you can see it's a mother and her daughter. Husband's taking a picture, but look in the window over here behind them. You can see 2 pretty distinct images. The one on the left looks like an older woman with her hair up in a bun or something, and to the right, it looks like a dog. It looks like a bulldog. You can kind of see the short little ears. You can see the black snout, I guess you'd call it. And there was nobody in the house at the time this picture was taken. They just moved in. The woman actually hand delivered this picture to me because she didn't trust the post office. So this is the original picture that she had sent me. And she said nothing ever happened in the house afterwards. They never owned a dog. But the woman, she said, does resemble an aunt that had died before she was born. So, maybe perhaps, the aunt was kind of checking in, on her niece. This is Waverly Hills Sanitarium again. This is talked about earlier about these big gaming cameras. This shows you how this gaming camera can literally light up the entire hallway with this infrared flash. So you don't get blinded. The ghost doesn't get blinded if there's something there. And what we see here, this is right after we were doing a mini box session, and we had a toy truck on the ground. So we asked this is supposed to be an area where there's children's ghosts. So we asked the children to come over and move the toy truck. And something came through the mini box that sounded like it said, "It's hard." So I said, if it's hard, why don't you bring some of your friends to assist you? And I pointed the camera away from the group over in this direction. And oops, I don't know if I can zoom in on this or not, but you actually see what looks like possibly 1, 2, 3, 4 children, or 4 like shadow figures, and they're very short. As you look at the windowsill, the windowsill is probably only a couple feet. They're pretty short, so maybe they had come in response to our query about bringing your friends. So I kind of see, I thought I had enhanced this image, but that is the most interesting picture that we shot at Waverly Hills when we were there. Now, these 2 pictures here are of different locations. Now, the one on the left was taken with high-speed, black and white, 35mm infrared film. Infrared film is sensitive to heat, but it does pick up an area of light between 600 and 900 nanometers, a very, very thin area of infrared light. And I had taken this picture, this is a blow up, by the way, of the interior staircase at Hull House in downtown Chicago. And you can definitely see 1, 2, 3, 4 shadow figures on the stairs. In fact, this one directly in the center actually looks like it's shrouded in a monk's hood, 2 hands coming out, kind of locked together in prayer. And this gentleman here is really kind of superimposed in the banister. And they're different heights because they're probably on different steps as they were coming out. There had been reports of shadowy monk-like figures in there. In fact, I'm going to be shooting a segment in the midst of shooting a special for Channel 11, WTTW, public television in Chicago. It might be picked up by other public television stations. And Hull House is going to be one location we're going to be going into to do an investigation. We've already shot some footage along Archer Avenue. We're going to be doing more shooting, which I'm really excited about. Now, the one on the right was actually taken, in a building that no longer exists in the north side of Chicago. There's a grocery store there now. Now, this girl that's standing there, this was taken with a Polaroid camera. Again, something that develops in your hand in 60 seconds. You can see this cloud-like area on the stairs here, very sharply cut off and defined right on the far right-hand corner. The rest of it seems to be more tenuous. Some parts you can see through, some parts are more visually opaque. This, I don't believe, is a ghost photograph, as it could be more of a psychic photograph. This could be something that might have been caused by the woman on the staircase, because if you look carefully, there is strands or filaments, I can find my cursor there, strands or filaments coming out of the stomach of this girl apparently and collecting on the stairs. So maybe this is something that she was producing. I hate to use the word ectoplasm, but it wasn't something that was visible to the naked eye. But again, because of camera's ability to freeze a moment of time and space, remember, our eyes take in video. We're like a videotape machine. But a 35mm camera or any type of camera, it freezes a moment of time and space in sometimes a fraction of a second. I got cameras that can take pictures at 1/1000th of a second. That's a second. Try to snap your fingers 1,000 times faster. That's how fast these shutters are. And in that short space of time, there may have been something there that, because of the shortness of its appearance, was not there long enough to send a signal to our eyes, to our retina, into our brain to say, hey, there's something there. It's just not there quick enough. But because the camera can freeze that moment of time and space, that's why you often hear, well, I didn't hear it, excuse me, I didn't see it, but the camera caught it. Well, yeah, the camera is going to be able to freeze that fraction of a second. Cameras are very good for picking up things. Here's one of my favorites, actually. This was a house. The woman that owned the house had died, and they were trying to fix it up so they could sell it. So they're putting a new roof on there, so forth, so on. Nobody in the house, but what's over here in the window? It sure looks like an older lady kind of looking out the window, inspecting their job. Now, I know for a fact this was not fabricated. I know this gentleman that's in the white shirt, and they're not even looking in that direction. They're just doing their job. So, that's a very good indication of a ghost photograph. Now, my all-time favorite. I actually got one more here. This is actually Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, again in South Pittsburgh, Tennessee. And this is a room where a woman used to, some areas were long-term care. So when she died, nobody ever came back to claim her clothes. You can see her clothes and her cosmetics and everything still in. So we kind of call those like trigger objects in the vernacular. When this photograph was taken, nobody was anywhere in the frame of this, but if you look to the far left, you can see hair, neck, shoulders, waistline, dress. Something was moving in that direction was captured with the camera. Again, we didn't see that, but again, it was semi-transparent. You could see directly through it. And I guess, again, nobody was dressed like that in our group. We all had blue jeans on or shorts, tank tops or t-shirts, because this was the middle of August. It's pretty hot. This is my favorite, one of my favorites. We were doing an investigation at Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, Midlothian, a very old abandoned cemetery dating back to the 1830s. Now, we were there. Our team, I'd given a map to everybody. I told them to go through and use equipment and their own feelings. And if they felt anything, saw anything, sensed anything, to mark it on the map. When we got back, when everybody got back, going through, several people marked about 3 different locations that they had felt something. So we went back to those locations and did other experiments, photography, EVP, EMF devices, to see if anything was going on. Well, this photograph was taken by Judy Huff in 1981 with a point and shoot 35 millimeter camera loaded with high-speed black and white infrared film. And I told her, because I'm very familiar with that film, the safeguards you need to take so you don't fog the film, you don't damage the film. When she saw this, she was photographing this center, this is in the center right here, because normally when you take a photograph, you center the subject. Okay, so the subject of this photograph was here in the center. So she put these away, she looked at them, didn't see anything. She went back a couple of weeks later just to look at them again, and then she noticed this figure on the far left-hand side. There's a checkerboard tombstone here, and this figure of a woman is sitting on, and she's in a full-length gown. Nobody was dressed in a full-length gown. Again, this was August, and it was hot, and there was nobody like that. So we took this image and we enlarged it. And you can see a woman with kind of brownish hair, a long gown, maybe down to her ankles. Parts of her body are actually semi-transparent. Her head, you can actually see trees and bushes through. And this, I think this would be her left knee. It's semi-transparent. You can see part of the fence behind her. At the time, we had no idea who this was. The marker that she's sitting on would have had another, like a pinnacle on top. That's been missing for decades. More historical research indicated she probably is a woman who was married to a state senator, the very first house that was built in Orland Park. And this was one of his wives. And she is buried in the cemetery, but because the plaques from the cemetery and the grave, what somebody's buried here, somebody's buried here, that's been lost to time. So we don't know exactly who is buried there. So that is something that's still a mystery, but it's one of the best photographs that ever came across so far. It showed up in Chicago Sun-Times, Chicago Tribune. I was on Discovery Channel on a segment called Phantom Photographs. In fact, you can actually go to my Facebook page and send me a Facebook request, and I'll accept you. And you can actually see these videos that we actually shot, and some of these television shows, including this one that was on the Discovery Channel. And it's pretty interesting. Well, that's my presentation for today. Again, I wish to thank everybody for being such an attentive audience, and I hope I kind of titillated your appetite for some of the things that we do and some of the equipment, and how mindsets have changed, how equipment has changed over the years and over the decades. And I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.